I don't take orders from people who don't know what they're really hungry for. The words weren't loud, but they struck the room like a thunderclap on a still night. Not shouted, not barked, but carried on the kind of calm that demands attention. They were spoken with the quiet, lethal confidence of someone who had swallowed too much silence. Too many nights, too many injustices, and had finally found the courage to let truth ring free. It was a Thursday night at Argento, the kind of Manhattan restaurant where polished silver gleamed under mood lighting, and money whispered through the velvet chairs. The crowd, clothed in wealth and expectation, paused mid-bite, suspended in disbelief. A hush fell like a velvet curtain dot. In the center of it all stood Miles Carter, waiter, widower, a father wearing the uniform of service like armor. His apron was crisp, his shirt white as fresh snow. One hand held a wine bottle meant for table 8. The other, metaphorically, held the remnants of a young boy's dignity. Moments earlier, Ava Lancaster, tech mogul and icy sovereign of real estate empires, had done what power too often does when unmoored from empathy. She humiliated. Her voice, smooth and surgical, had sliced through a young server's mistake with no hesitation. "Excuse me," she had snapped, each syllable home like a dagger. "If you can't speak with precision, why are you speaking at all?" The boy, barely out of his teens, had crumbled, pale and trembling. He'd fled into the back like a shadow retreating from a storm. Miles had watched it. He had seen it before, but something in him, some hidden reservoir of resilience, refused to be still this time. He stepped forward, and when Ava turned her frostbitten gaze on him, expecting apology or retreat, she got neither. "I don't take orders from people who don't know what they're really hungry for," he said. There was no bravado in it, no anger, just clarity, and it silenced the restaurant in a way no shouting ever could. Ava stared at him, her face unreadable, but tight, as if holding back something unspoken. "I didn't ask for your opinion," she said, voice sharp as broken crystal. "No," Miles answered, steady as stone. "You asked for respect without offering any in return." All around them, forks stopped midair, a napkin slipped to the floor. Even the pianist missed a note. Tension had turned to reverence, the kind people feel when something real cuts through the artificial. Ava leaned back, studying him now, not as prey, but as puzzle. "You must think this is brave," she murmured. "Your 15 seconds of fame." "No," Miles said. "Bravery isn't volume. It's silence. How long someone like that kid can take being crushed before someone else says enough." She bristled. Then, with the calm control of someone used to getting what she wants, Ava waved a dismissive hand. "Bring me the Wagyu, medium rare, and send someone else." But Miles didn't move. Her voice rose not in anger, but in voltage. "Is this how Argento trains staff now, to defy paying guests?" "I'm not refusing to serve you," Miles said softly. "I'm refusing to serve your anger." And somewhere in the back where no one saw, but everything was remembered, a phone caught it all. Ava narrowed her gaze. "What's your name?" "Miles." "You'll be gone by tomorrow." He nodded, not with fear, but with something freer. "Do what you need to." "I already did." He turned and walked away. The servers parted like water around him. In the kitchen, Marcy, the general manager, was waiting. Her arms were crossed, her expression maternal in that dangerous way that meant she might defend you or scold you, depending on your next word. "What happened?" She humiliated Ben. "I wasn't going to let that slide." "That's Ava Lancaster, Miles," Marcy hissed. "She's worth more zeros than this restaurant has napkins. Her dog is brand deals." Miles leaned on the counter, grounding himself like a tree against a hurricane. "I'm raising a daughter. I'm not going to let her believe that money means you get to strip someone's dignity in public." Marcy blinked. For a second, the manager in her faltered, and the woman who had once served fries in a greasy diner nodded slowly, remembering who she used to be. "I'll talk to her," she said quietly. "But Miles, be ready. There will be fallout." And there was. The video erupted online like a match to dry leaves. Waiter stands up to billionaire CEO. Some called it justice. Others called it suicide. Miles didn't watch the storm. He was too busy helping his daughter Ella with her solar system diorama, brushing her teeth, tucking her into bed. It wasn't until she was asleep, her small hand clinging to his shirt, that he finally checked his phone. Dozens of texts, media, inquiries, even a message from a number with no name. You think you're noble. You're not. Enjoy the attention while it lasts. All Miles stared at the message, then locked his phone and whispered into the night, I didn't want attention. I just wanted her to see herself, far above the city, in a penthouse of glass and silence. Ava Lancaster stood alone. She watched the video again, not for PR strategy, not to script a rebuttal. She watched it because something inside her, something brittle and hollow, had cracked. She wasn't tired from meetings or flights. She was tired of herself, of being made of ice and cold fire, of mistaking power for presence. In a glass conference room the next day, her team fidgeted around her. He made you the villain, her VP said flatly. You made him a hero. That's how the world sees it. And for once, Ava had no defense, because she couldn't stop hearing him say it. I'm refusing to serve your anger. Back in Queens, Miles washed dishes with the quiet ache of someone who knew the cost of doing the right thing. He hadn't tried to be noble. He just couldn't watch another kid crumble beneath someone else's storm. His phone buzzed. Marcy, coming early tomorrow. Bring your apron. Just in case. Just in case. The next morning, Miles walked in with his spine straight, even though the weight in his chest hadn't lifted. Marcy closed the office door behind them. She didn't demand you be fired. She didn't threaten a lawsuit, but she said she'd be watching, which means she's not done. Miles braced. You're not fired, Marcy said, because I watched the tape too. And you didn't strike. You reflected. You held up a mirror, and she didn't like what she saw. Miles looked down. It didn't feel noble. He muttered. It never does, Marcy replied. But it was. Then she leaned forward. Keep doing your job, but be ready. She'll come back. People like her don't leave things unfinished. Miles gave a tired smile. She looked like someone who hasn't cried in years. You planning to fix her? Marcy asked, one eyebrow raised. He shook his head. No, I think she's already breaking. That night, Ava Lancaster stood once more by the window of her high-rise, overlooking a city that never stopped shining. But inside her, the shadows had begun to stir. She had turned down interviews, declined PR spins, let her voicemails pile up unanswered. She watched the city, watched the version of herself reflected in a man she dismissed and then couldn't stop seeing. She didn't cry, not yet, but her silence, for the first time in years, didn't feel like control. It felt like the beginning of something real, something unpolished, something human. Something hungry for change. She didn't come for a fight. She came to return to herself. Ava Lancaster didn't know what haunted her more, the words or the way he said them. She had replayed the video countless times, not to dissect her own icy demeanor, not to relive the shame that now followed her like a shadow, but to hear his voice again, that unnervingly steady voice, the kind that didn't rise or plead, but held firm. It had spoken not from anger, but from something deeper, from a place that recognized hers. I'm not refusing to serve you, he had said. I'm refusing to serve your anger. That line didn't sting because it was cruel. It landed because it was true, and the truth had a way of echoing in the places she'd long sealed shut. The storm didn't announce itself with thunder that day. No paparazzi, no flashing headlines, just the sound of heels sleek and sharp clicking across Argento's marble floors. Ava stepped into the restaurant with the posture of a woman who'd built empires and buried her emotions beneath them. She didn't arrive draped in security or cloaked in influence. Just a midnight blue coat tailored like armor, a severe ponytail, and eyes that held entire winners behind them. From across the bar, Marcy stiffened. Her breath hitched. The Magda D went pale, scanning the dining room as if hoping Miles might vanish before her request reached him. I'd like a table, Ava said, voice cool, but not cutting. For how many? The Magda D asked, already bracing. One, she replied, then added with a quiet finality, If he's working, I'd like Miles to serve me. In the kitchen, Miles had just plated a delicate fillet of sea bass when Marcy slipped in like smoke. Her voice was low. She's here, and she asked for you. He didn't blink. He didn't ask who. He just wiped his hands, smoothed his apron, and said, "What table?" She was already seated when he arrived, poised and unreadable, her fingers idly tracing the menu. She looked up slowly. Their eyes met. No cameras. No court of public opinion. Just the people, quietly facing the aftermath of a moment that neither of them could erase. "Good evening," he said gently. "Good evening," she echoed, the words uncertain on her tongue, like a language she hadn't spoken in years. He waited. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She merely closed the menu with a quiet click. "I'll have the steak frites, medium rare. No substitutions," she said. Then, after a pause, "and a glass of whatever red wine you recommend." "I trust your judgment." Miles raised a brow. "Do you?" She didn't smile, but something faint and fragile flickered behind her gaze. "Let's call it an experiment." He nodded and walked away. When he returned with the wine, Ava was no longer lost in her phone or inspecting her surroundings. She was simply watching the room. "Busy night," she murmured. "Always," he replied. "People still get hungry, even when the internet's on fire." She sipped. Then quietly, deliberately she said, "I didn't come here to argue. I didn't think you did." She studied him. "You're calm. Still," he said, then offered a small smile. "Stillness isn't the absence of fire. It's knowing where to set it." That made her pause. She placed the glass down, fingers brushing the stem. Her voice softened. "You said something the other night about not serving my anger." "I did. You could have embarrassed me. You could have escalated it, said something cruel, but you didn't." "Why?" Miles held her gaze, unflinching. "Because I've been on both sides of that table. I've been the one holding the anger and the one it's hurled at. Neither side feels good, but only one of them gets to choose what happens next." The silence between them was no longer laced with tension. It was sacred, earned. The quiet that follows truth when neither party looks away from it. Eva stared at her napkin. Her voice, when it returned, trembled with something long buried. "I wasn't always like that. The woman in the video. I built everything by being harder than what tried to break me. Somewhere along the way, I froze over." Miles didn't respond. He didn't soothe or contradict. He simply listened, and in his listening, she found something rarer than forgiveness, respect. "I grew up in foster care," she continued, her words a fragile offering. "Learned early that people only listen to money, not pain. So I chased one to silence the other. Thought it was working until you didn't flinch." She met his eyes. "Why didn't you?" Miles breathed in, slow and steady. "Because I wasn't looking at a monster. I saw a mirror, and sometimes the only way to break a cycle is to refuse to feed it." Her lips parted. Her defenses trembled. "Do you always talk like that?" He chuckled. "Only on Tuesdays?" Their conversation paused as the food arrived. Eva didn't reach for her phone. No photo, no filters. Just a quiet bite, slow and contemplative. "Perfect," she said softly. He nodded and turned to leave. But she called out, "Miles." He paused mid-step. "I don't want to be that woman again. The one who walks into a room and leaves ruin behind." He turned halfway. His voice, as always, was calm. "Then don't." It wasn't poetic. It wasn't polished. But it struck her harder than any speech ever had. When she finished her meal, she reached for her bag, then hesitated. "What's the check?" "It's on the house," Miles said. She raised an eyebrow. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity," he replied. "It's gratitude for the quiet and for trying." She said nothing, just slid a folded $100 bill under the rim of her glass for the server who didn't flinch. She said, "And the man who didn't look away," and then she was gone. Later that evening, Marcy stood beside Miles as he wiped the table clean. "Well," she said, arms crossed. She didn't throw anything. "Is she coming back?" He asked. I think. Miles replied, she already did. Across the city, Ava Lancaster stood before a bathroom mirror, slowly removing her earrings. She didn't avoid her reflection. She studied it like someone meeting an old acquaintance for the first time in years. She didn't know what she was walking toward yet, but she knew this for the first time. She had stopped running. The fall wasn't dramatic. A little girl slipped. On a jungle gym in Central Park, a minor stumble. A scrape. Nothing newsworthy, but for Ava, standing nearby in impractical heels, it slowed the world to a single moment. She wasn't just watching a stranger's child fall. She was watching a younger version of herself hit the ground, and this time, she had the chance to reach out. Careful, she called out, rushing forward, coat flaring like a cape that belonged to no hero she'd ever believed in. The girl's knees were scraped, palms dirty, lip trembling with pride trying to suppress tears. Hey, Ava said, kneeling beside her. You okay? I'm fine, the girl whispered. I'm tough. Ava smiled gently. Of course you are, but even tough kids get hugged sometimes. The girl threw her arms around her without warning. That's when Miles Carter appeared, breathless, a to-go coffee and snack bag in hand. He froze. His daughter Ella was in Ava Lancaster's arms. Ella, he said, his voice tight with concern. She helped me, Ella said, still gripping Ava's coat. Miles approached slowly. You always hang around playgrounds during the week. Not usually, Ava replied, rising and brushing mulch from her knees. My assistant insisted on fresh air therapy. He smirked. And you just happened to catch my kid. She reminds me of someone. He followed her gaze. You. No, she whispered. Someone I wanted to be. Miles gestured to a nearby bench. You're already here. Want to sit a bit? They watched Ella play. The swings creaked. The sun filtered through the trees. Ava crossed her arms, her expression softer. I haven't been to a park since I was 15. Why's that? Because parks are where kids feel safe. I stopped feeling that way a long time ago. Miles didn't respond. He waited. I was in 6 homes by the time I was 11. She said finally, learn to be useful, silent, sharp. No one wanted to keep overdue library books. Miles nodded. And you built a fortress. She looked at him. You say that like you've seen one before. I built one too. He said quietly, not as tall, just as lonely. She looked down. There was no pity in his voice, no sermon, just truth. I used to teach history, 9th grade. What happened? My wife got sick, chemo. I left teaching for shift work so I could be near her after she passed. I didn't go back. She blinked. You gave it all up. No, he said, looking at Ella. I traded it for her. Not a loss, just a different kind of legacy. There was no clever response, just a silence that felt, for once, like safety. Ella came bounding over. Can we get ice cream? Daddy, please. Miles grinned. Only if you promise not to fall again. I didn't fall, I slid with style. She declared. Ava laughed. She startled herself. You want to join us? Miles asked. She hesitated. I'd have calls. They'll still be there. She won't be sick forever. Ava blinked, then stood. I haven't had ice cream in 5 years. Then you're overdue. Ella grabbed both their hands, Ava on the left, Miles on the right hand, pulled them forward, and in that small, sticky-fingered moment, Ava felt something shift. Something that had once turned cold now warmed again. It wasn't redemption. It was a beginning. And sometimes, that's everything. Miss Ava, I think you should come to our pizza night on Friday. Daddy always burns the crust, but we pretend it's fancy. The words caught Ava off guard, not because they were strange, but because they were simple, offered like a ribbon of warmth on a chilly day. Her eyes flicked to Miles, who gave a helpless shrug, the corners of his mouth betraying the beginning of a smile. You're welcome, he said. If you want. She didn't answer right away, but she didn't say no. And somehow, in that delicate pause, everything changed. The scent of slightly burnt pizza drifted through the air of the tiny apartment like an old friend who never needed an invitation. It wrapped itself around the faded wallpaper and battered furniture. making even the imperfections feel sacred. Ava Lancaster stood near the kitchen, arms crossed a fortress and heels watching as Miles slid a lopsided, thoroughly scorched pizza from the oven onto a baking tray that had seen better years. The pepperoni clung to one side like it was running. From a house fire, Ella clapped her hands with glee. It's perfect. Ava raised an eyebrow, unsure whether to laugh or stage an intervention. Is this normal? Miles grinned as he handed over a stack of mismatched plates. It's tradition. Every Friday night, one overcooked pizza, one underwhelming movie, and a dad who tries too hard. Ava took her seat slowly at a dining table clearly salvaged from a yard sale, her posture formal, but her curiosity peeking through. It's charming, but the word didn't come out as a compliment. It came out as something else, a confession. Ella handed her a paper plate as if it were fine porcelain. We have 3 rules for pizza night, she said with great solemnity. Ava smiled despite herself. Oh, what are they? The girl held up 3 small fingers. 1, you have to try at least 1 bite, even if it's black. 2, no foams. And 3, she paused, as if announcing the law of the land. You have to laugh at least once, even if it's a fake laugh. That one hit Ava like a soft punch to the ribs. She looked at the child, then over at Miles, who just nodded, like it was gospel. She made them up when she was 4. I just enforced them. With a reluctant breath, Ava placed her phone screen down on the counter and picked up a slice of the charred mess. All right, she said, with a kind of reverence. They ate, they laughed. Ella ensured it, and somewhere between the bad crust and the hilariously bad llama time travel movie, Ava found herself relaxing into the chaos, soothed not by perfection, but by its beautiful absence. Midway through the film, she excused herself to the bathroom. That's when she saw it. The porcelain sink had a long, jagged crack. The mirror above it was speckled, edges dull and rusting. One cabinet hung crooked. On the shelf, wedged between a unicorn toothbrush and a tired bottle of lotion, sat a framed photo. It was faded, chipped at the edges. A woman with eyes like quiet courage and a smile that could ease storms stood beside a younger Miles. Baby Ella perched on his shoulder. Ava picked it up, and the weight in her hands made her chest tighten. She was Sam, came Miles' voice softly from behind her. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, a shadow of memory in his gaze. She hated this bathroom, he said it was too cold, so I put her here to warm it up. Ava didn't speak for a moment. Then, almost without meaning, she whispered, you still talk about her like she's in the next room. Miles gave a wistful shrug. She's in every room. There was no bitterness in his tone, only reverence, the kind of love that doesn't vanish, only changes form. Ava's voice cracked when she said, I don't think I've ever been loved like that. He looked at her, steady. Then the people who've known you didn't look hard enough. Back in the living room, Ella was asleep, half a cookie in one hand, one leg draped dramatically over the side of the couch. Ava watched her, voice quiet. She trusts so easily. Miles nodded, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. I try to keep it that way. The world will teach her caution soon enough. I want to delay that lesson as long as I can. Ava lowered herself to the couch beside him. I never got that. I was solving adult problems in a child's body. I smiled to survive. I wielded sharpness like a sword because it was all I had. Miles turned toward her, gaze unwavering. You still smile to survive. She blinked. You noticed? I've worn that smile, he said, the one that hides a wound so well, even you forget it's still bleeding. A silence settled between them, soft, sacred. I built everything I have from nothing, Ava whispered. Every inch earned through grit, through not flinching, through outpacing everything that tried to break me. And now I'm here, in a tiny apartment, with bad pizza and a child who barely knows me, and I've never felt safer. Miles didn't speak. He reached out instead. Callous fingers gently found hers. Sometimes, he said, safety doesn't come from walls. It comes from being seen and still being let in. Her breath hitched. What do you see when you look at me, Miles? He didn't hesitate. A woman who's tired of being strong all the time and doesn't know how to ask for softness. She didn't cry, but something broke. Not with noise. With Gray's daughter, she stood to leave. She turned at the door, suddenly unsure. Was I okay? I mean, tonight. Miles smiled gently. You laughed. You ate burnt crust. You didn't check your phone. I'd say you passed. She laughed crooked and honest. Maybe next time I'll bring dessert. He leaned against the door frame. Only if you stay for it. She hesitated, then nodded. Just once. But it was everything. The boardroom reeked of sterility, air purified, fear diffused beneath eucalyptus and sterile talking points. Ava Lancaster sat at the head of the table, every inch a polished executive. But inside her, something else stirred, something raw, something awake. Nick Haynes clicked through slides. Brand trust dropped 23%. He said, clients are skittish. The IPO. Ava raised a hand. We don't run on sentiment. We run on solutions. But perception drives valuation. Chimed Margot. Her words dipped in sugar and lined with steel. And right now, the perception is volatile. You want me to step down? Ava asked flatly. We want success. Margot replied. Whether that's with your more neutral figurehead is up to you. Ava stood, slowly, deliberately. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I built this company from blistered fingers and borrowed time. And you want me to fix a public narrative with a press statement? She looked them in the eye. All of them. I am fixing it. One human, moment at a time. Not with headlines, with humility. The room didn't erupt. It hushed. She wasn't defending herself. She was becoming herself. That night, she didn't return to her penthouse. She found herself at Miles' door, a pie box in her hand and her heart-threatening mutiny in her chest. He opened the door, eyes surprised but not startled. You brought dessert. I brought an apology, she said, but it comes in tiramisu. He stepped aside. Then come in. We don't turn away redemption baked in layers. Ella beamed when she saw her. You came back. I made a promise, Ava said. I saved a seat. Ella pointed to a towel on the chair beside her like it was throne-worthy. Dinner was leftovers. And laughter. Dessert disappeared in seconds. After Ella went to bed, Ava lingered in the doorway, watching as Miles brushed her daughter's hair from her face. She's magic, she whispered. She keeps me honest, Miles said, later in the kitchen. Moonlight dusted their faces like blessing. I don't have many friends, Ava confessed. Why not? I thought vulnerability was weakness. That if people saw me, really saw me, they'd leave. Maybe, Miles said. Or maybe they'd finally understand why you fight so hard. She looked up, tears threatening but not yet released. I'm not used to being seen. You are now, he said. Simply, she told him about the board meeting, the pressure, the demand to step aside. They're scared, she admitted. So was I until recently. She reached for his hand. You and Ella, you reminded me that real strength doesn't shout. It stays. It softens. It forgives. What now? He asked. Now, she whispered. I rebuild. Not just the company, me. He didn't pull her close. She came to him, and in that small kitchen in Queens, where the fridge hummed like a lullaby and plates bore the wear of ordinary miracles, the people who had mastered survival finally began to learn how to live together. She looked like someone still rediscovering herself. Miles, crisp in a white shirt with sleeves rolled, held Ella's hand gently as they stepped in. He didn't blink at the gathered murmurs or the stares. They were beginning to absorb the attention. But this time he carried someone with him. Marcy, perched behind the bar, raised an amused eyebrow. Should I light a candle or just bring the good plates? She whispered. Miles smirked in reply. Both they slipped into a quiet corner table, the kind usually reserved for dramatic apologies or whispered anniversaries. Ava surveyed the room. Are we sure this doesn't break some HR policy? She teased. We don't have an HR department. Miles murmured. Just Marcy, and she's too invested to care. A laugh slipped from Ava's lips, for the first time genuine, surprised, Beautifully real. Ella, beaming, presented a napkin folded into a tiny swan. I made it myself for you. Ava received it reverently. It's beautiful. Thank you. Keep it, Ella whispered, leaning close. In case you forget, you're special. Ava's throat tightened. She'd walked into boardrooms dripping with accolades, but never had a paper napkin folded with hope felt so monumental. Dinner was warm chaos and perfectly perfect. Crumbs, laughter. The shared confession of burnt banana bread and a wasabi. Mishap that had reduced Miles to tears. By dessert, Ella slept curled in Ava's lap, her fingers enveloping the fabric of Ava's coat. Miles brushed a stray crumb from her wrist. You look terrified. I am, she admitted softly. Of what? Wanting this. Too much. Afraid I don't deserve it. He cocked his head. When you enter a room, are you searching for exits or places to land softly? Ava paused. Exits. Survival, not power. He leaned in, his voice warm. You've survived so long. You forgot what safe feels like. She looked down at Ella sleeping. This feels dangerous. No, he said. It feels unfamiliar. There's a difference. She met his eyes. What if I break it? He reached for her hand. Then we'll fix it together. Nothing here is flawless. We're all cracked, but we hold on anyway. Tears tugged at her lashes, but she swallowed them. Not here. Not yet. They stepped into the cool night. Cars honked. Sirens sighed. Neon lights pulsed like unsettled dreams. But Ava didn't feel alone. She walked between them, Miles holding Ella close, Ava beside them in soft silence. At the curb, her driver waited but stayed put until she nodded. She turned to him. I've been thinking. Dangerous. He replied with a teasing smirk. I want to be reckless. He raised an eyebrow. Like, invite you to a charity gala. She had to finish the thought. It's next week. It's full of carefully curated people in dresses they'll never wear again. I hate it, but this year, so why go? Because I want to show up with someone who reminds me what this fight was for. He took a breath. Ava, I'm a waiter from Queens. I don't own a tux. I've never RSVP'd to a thing this big. She stepped forward. You walked through a viral storm. Without blinking, you comforted a woman the world called villainous. You're raising a daughter with more grace than anyone I know. You deserve it. You're serious? I am. He glanced at Ella clutching his shirt, then up to her. Okay, but promise me when they start whispering you don't run. I don't run anymore. She said quietly, I walk into fire, and if I panic, she closed her eyes. What else she could say except the truth? Then I'll remind you who you are, like you did for me, under a chandelier dripping crystal like frozen fire. They entered the ballroom. Tuxedos and gowns floated on soft music. Miles stood rigid and still, his rented tux pinching his shoulders, mirrors surrounding him with reflections he felt ill-prepared to claim. You okay? Ava whispered, appearing next to him, midnight blue, unembellished pure presence. No sparkle required. He turned, momentarily breathless. You look like power wrapped in silk. Good, she replied, because I'm going to need it. They moved through the room, curious glances, half whispers, but Ava didn't flinch. She grounded him. Remind me why I agreed to do this. Because you asked. Because part of healing is walking into what once shrank you. Miles exhaled. This place doesn't feel small. You don't look small, she said, slipping her arm through his. They came to the auction. They'd come for charity, but tonight, the law was whoever won a dinner with Ava Lancaster one lone evening for one bidder. The crowd murmured as bids climbed, till a quiet voice broke through. 100,000. Miles said, gasps. He didn't look at her. He looked at the MC. Yes, I'll pay tonight. He produced his phone. Bank transfer confirmed. The room froze. The MC checked. Sold to the gentleman whose quiet confidence lit up this room. Ava stared, her face luminous in surprise. That was reckless, he told her quietly, insane. She answered. Where did you get that kind of money? Sam had a life insurance policy. He swallowed. I never touched it until tonight. She blinked. He wasn't showing off. He was showing up, Under the lights, Ava reached hand, didn't let go. Later, beneath the sky too wide to hold, they paused on the street. You didn't have to do that, I know. You don't owe me anything. I know. She turned to him, voice unsteady. Then, why? He thought long. Because you are not that woman in the video. I wanted the city to see that. And what do you see? He stepped closer. I see someone who wants softness without breaking. Once a survivor, now wanting to speak truth. A woman finally believing she's worthy of being chosen not for what she built, but for who she is underneath. Tears shone in her eyes, unguarded. She leaned forward, risky. A perfect hand kissed him. It wasn't graceful. It was real. He whispered, "You're not porcelain anymore." Ava. She smiled through tears. I think I became fireproof. They stood there, and Ava thought of how far she'd come not to find love, which had always seemed within reach when she'd let her walls down, but to rediscover trust. The real currency, she tested it now, letting it stretch around her heart. They pulled apart, and the city's hum felt warmer, stronger. She stepped back into her gilded life. The next day, the board called. Today notice. Step down pending image rehab. Mesmerizing betrayal delivered by crystal tone. At the same moment, Miles was in a school gym, watching Ella spin as Saturn with glitter rings. No messages from Ava, no apology or reassurance. Ella shouted from the stage, "Daddy, you're the most beautiful planet." Miles smiled, heart aching, and checked his phone again. No notification, no reassurance yet, but he knew it was coming, and she, finally, knew she was going to walk through that next door into trouble, into healing, into everything she had almost forgotten she was capable of. She didn't just survive. She was choosing to live. He hadn't expected his world to tilt with the click of a screen, but when his thumb hovered over the headline, it felt like the ground beneath his heart fractured. Exclusive, inside the bid. Who really paid for that $100,000 dinner? The article didn't whisper doubts, it shouted them. It taunted. It unspooled a narrative that turned sincerity into spectacle. They claimed Ava had choreographed the entire event. Her grand gesture nothing more than a calculated ploy. Miles, they said, was no more than an actor in her carefully staged redemption tale, a single father with impeccable timing planted to tug at heartstrings and soften headlines. There were photographs, grainy, suggestive, but damning nonetheless. One caught Ava's assistant near the auction table. Another showed Miles, caught mid-expression, like a man stunned by betrayal. But the worst wound came in the form of a quote, a former board member, implying Ava had scripted her downfall and her rise, all for the sake of a redemption arc she could control. Miles read the words again and again until they blurred into a dull ache that had no shape, no truth, just noise. He turned off his phone and let the silence swallow him. The next morning, a knock broke that silence. Ava stood at his door bare-faced, breathless, her coat undone, like she had run through a storm of her own making and left her armor behind. She looked less like a CEO and more like someone returning to the ruins of something sacred. "I didn't know it would fall apart like this," she said, her voice raw, frayed at the edges. "You didn't call," he replied, his voice softer than anger, but colder than comfort. "I thought I could fix it before you saw." He shook his head slowly. Don't protect me with silence. That's not love. That's fear." Her mouth tightened. "I'm being pushed out. Officially, the board turned. The press is feeding on my bones. And her voice cracked. "I'm so tired, Miles. I can't breathe without checking for daggers." He looked at her for a long time, as if weighing the weight of truth against the weight of love. "So tell me," he said gently, "tell me the truth." "I didn't stage that night," she said, her eyes never flinching from his. "You weren't part of a strategy. That bit, it shocked me. It terrified me. And then it gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I needed it to be real. Was it?" he asked, stepping closer. She nodded. "The most real thing I've ever known." He believed her not because of the words, but because of the break in her voice, the tremor in her hands. But belief didn't erase history. A lifetime of abandonment had taught him that sometimes love came with fire, and sometimes it left you burned. Ava, he murmured, do you want to win, or do you want to heal? Because those paths really lead to the same place. Her eyes shimmered. I want both. He touched her cheek, feather light. Then we walked, together, but no armor this time. No headlines, just us, and if I lose, everything that we start again, from truth, not from power. That night, she stood before the world with no script, no handlers, just her trembling voice and a folding table. The microphones captured every syllable as she unveiled the truth, the diner, the video, the auction, the love she never asked for but couldn't ignore. I built an empire, she said, but my proudest moment, letting someone hold me. When I was broken and not flinching, Miles watched from Queens, Ella sleeping beside him, unaware of the moment her father became more than a bystander. For once, he wasn't a footnote in someone else's legacy. He was the shift, the turning point. Outside, rain fell in Manhattan, not fierce or angry, but soft and steady, like a confession to long held. Ava sat at the edge of the Lincoln Center fountain, her feet dipped in cold water, shoes discarded, like she was searching for the part of her that still remembered how to feel without performing. The storm had passed, but it left grief in its wake. She had walked away from the company she birthed by choice. Her name remained on the glass doors, but not in the seat of power. It should have felt like defeat. Strangely, it felt like freedom. Miles appeared beside her without a sound. I figured I'd find you here, he said, his coat soaked, his presence warm. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. How? You always come here when you need to feel small again. She smiled faintly. You've been watching me that long? Since the first time you walked into the diner. You didn't say it, but your eyes did. Save me. I thought if I kept climbing towers, I could avoid pain. He took her hand, and I still ended up on the ground. Good, he whispered. That's where roots grow. They sat in that aching, necessary silence. Then came the question that had haunted her since her fall. Do you think I gave up? He shook his head. No, I think you chose differently. That's harder. Anyone can fight. It takes real strength to surrender the version of yourself that no longer fits. She breathed that in. Let it settle in her bones. I want to build again, she said, but slower, smaller, honest. Maybe a literacy nonprofit. Something real, something that walks into neighborhoods like mine used to be without a camera crew. Miles grinned, saving the world. But quieter, she bumped his shoulder, starting in Queens. Seriously, I found a space. It's falling apart. Perfect. What do I need? Volunteers. She looked at him. Patience. And someone who makes terrible coffee, but keeps showing up. He laughed. Are you offering me a job? I'm proposing something, she said, eyes bright. Just haven't figured out the name yet. 1 week later, a crooked sign hung above a white door. Chapter 1. No gala. No fanfare. Just a beginning. Inside, mismatched chairs. A hand-painted tree mural where every leaf was a child's fingerprint and a spirit stitched together by sweat, books, and belief. Ella read aloud to second graders. Miles fixed a wobbly table with duct tape and determination. Eva sat beside a girl named Lanny, helping her write her first sentence. My name is Lanny, and I am not afraid anymore. Eva's breath caught. This wasn't power. It was presence. This wasn't empire. It was everything empire forgot to value. Later, when the day dimmed and children had gone home, Miles pulled her close. You were never porcelain, he whispered. You were still wrapped in velvet, but now you're soft by choice. That's the bravest thing I've seen. And in that moment, surrounded by chalk, coffee, and laughter that didn't need headlines, Ava Lancaster, the woman once feared in every boardroom, finally understood what it meant to be loved, not for her power, but for her presence. It was a Sunday morning in Queens. The air smelled like cinnamon and second chances. Inside Chapter 1, sunlight poured through old curtains. Ava sorted books with quiet joy. She let the coffee go cold. Across the room, Miles knelt beside a boy. Strength isn't never falling, he said softly. It's getting back up every time. Later, they hosted an open house. No press, just neighbors, cookies, and kids who no longer saw her on screens, but in the room, reading green eggs and ham with silly voices. She was no longer unreachable. She was real. At sunset, Ella slept in a corner like a curled poem, and Ava asked, "Miles, you ever think of that night? The diner." She nodded. Double quotes, "The order you didn't bring." He smiled. "You looked like you needed silence more than caffeine. You saw something in me I didn't know how to show. I waited," he said, "behind the glass, until you were ready." Her voice wavered. "What if I hadn't come back? I would have kept pouring coffee," he said, waiting for a different miracle. She stepped closer. "I love you, Miles." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Since you threatened me with a spoon, I've loved you." That night, after Ella had been tucked into lavender dreams, Miles found Ava in the kitchen, barefoot, humming. "You know," he said, "there's still one order I haven't taken." He pulled out a velvet box. Inside, a silver ring shaped like a tiny book. Its spine read, "Begin again." She slid it on herself. No vows, no show, just truth. Months later, Chapter 1 had grown to new volunteers, an art class, and Dad and Daughter's story are every Saturday. Ava built slow. She rested often. She loved deeply. On the wall hung their favorite quote, "Not everything we build has to touch the sky. Sometimes the bravest thing we can build is a life." And outside, the world rushed. But inside that little center in Queens, something rare beat steadily, born not from perfection, but from grace. It began with the coffee he never served and turned into a love they chose day by day, hand in hand.